Hey everyone. So here's the thing. Our bodies are always changing. Whether it be age, injury or the pandemic, our bodies are never the same for long. If we're lucky, our bodies change slowly. Over the course of my life I've had lots of change, especially with things like my speech, for example. But a few years ago, my body changed very quickly. Yours will too, maybe not as fast, maybe not as soon, but no health bar is infinite, no journey is endless, and the side quests eventually run out for us all. So hey, hi, I'm Jamie. I'm autistic. This is Lion. He's a cat. We get along very well. We've been hanging out for about 20 years. I'm a big bouncy nerd and I do accessibility things. I spent a decade with the BBC and I've been bouncing around doing fun stuff ever since I left. In a nutshell, this talk is about one of the tools we've been using to shape our lives over the last 10 years. It's a useful way of looking at stuff, and I hope it's useful to help you folks in creating kind of more accessible and enjoyable games. I'm hoping this is a useful lens for you, and yeah, with a bit of luck it is. So, how is this lens and what does it really talk about? Well, as the title gives away, the lens comes down to how do I answer the question, what can I do? It seems like a simple enough question, but in my experience it's kind of quite hard to answer. It's pretty hard to describe the things I can do and kind of how it changes over time, and I kind of ended up coming up with a way of describing it. I started breaking things down into the concepts of ability, capability and capacity. It's a very subtle difference, I know, but it's extremely useful to think about the concepts separately. I'm able. I can fly a plane, give a talk, write code to catch crime or just pass the time. I can build a bike, build a car, build a PC. Millions of people use the things I've made every day, and that is a real scary thought. In short, I'm very able, in the sense that the list of things I can do is really long. My ability is that long list. It's the long list of all the things I can do. But as I said before, kind of our bodies are always changing. There is a lovely long list of all the things I can do, but I can't do them every day. That shorter list, the list of things I can do now, today, I call that my capability. And a few years ago, that changed a lot. Sometimes, like with my injury, just over the space of a few days even. I'm never really comfortable, so to just explain a little about my body, it's like there's a Lego brick always pushing into my spine. The smallest touch feels like a hammer, and some days it's a real achievement if I can feel my feet. But the issue isn't in my nerves and my bone. It's in the seats, in the world which assumes I can walk, and the places which were never designed with folks like me in mind. To put it another way, it's not the impairments that disable me, my ability to walk, or being autistic, my ability to communicate. It's the barriers. You do. You disable me. In all the things we create, we add barriers. They come in many flavours. There are barriers that prevent me from starting something, barriers that limit me from doing my best, and there's barriers that block me from completing things. So one of the interesting things is that most barriers arise from assumptions. We make assumptions all the time, and we encode the assumptions we make into the things we build in the form of barriers that other people then fall over. It's not a bad thing, it's not an intentional thing, but it's a thing that happens. If we can improve our assumptions, then we create less exclusion. We can include more people and more people can have fun doing stuff. And in a nutshell, that's capability. The biggest thing that impacts my capability, e.g. how many of my abilities I can use today, are the barriers that get in the way. But even when I am capable of doing something, there's only so much I can do. I call that my capacity. Essentially, it's about how much energy I have. I might be able to do one big thing or two little things. I've been thinking about it this way for a really long time, and for a while I've been using this theory called spoon theory, where essentially spoons represent the energy that I have and how it's going to be used by different things. So for example, it's useful for me to track how the energy that I'm using each day goes into daily living or moving or the rest. By tracking my spoons and then removing the barriers, I can do more of the things that are important to me. I have the same amount of energy in the same body, but if I remove the barriers that get in the way, I can get more done. So, as a really quick summary, my ability is everything I can do, and my capability is what I can do today. How much stuff I can get done per day is my capacity. I find these three concepts really useful. By separating things out this way, I can answer that question, what can I do? I can also shape the solutions that I use as well. So that's the basic idea. So let's apply it to some games. Gaming is a huge part of my life, and thinking about it in these terms of ability, capability and capacity has been really useful. So my ability. This is Lion enjoying some games on the beanbag. It's quite painful to sit and game on the sofa, but I can sit flopped on the beanbag pretty nicely. Lion is getting ready to play some Forza, a game we've put hundreds of hours into over the years. I've played on consoles for most of the last decade, because traditionally at least the console experience used to be nice and simple. But generally speaking, I've always found it easier to game on something like the Xbox. It probably doesn't help that I have a bit of an allergy to Windows. I've been using a Mac for 20 years. Windows sometimes brings me out in hives. When I'm unable to do something, then I need to learn how. I wasn't born knowing how to play every game. Like everyone else, when I'm unable, I need to learn how to do things. So whilst I might be sat on the beanbag and able to hold myself up, I might not necessarily know how to do things in the game. And this is where great games help me to learn. If I'm unable, then the way that a game can help is by helping me to learn. They give me the tools to succeed. So learning is part of most games. It's why many have tutorial areas and the stuff like that, and special levels and whatnot. So one of the areas that a game can use to help me learn is to give me repeatable tutorials. Really great games like Zelda work well because they give me these methods to repeat things at my own pace. I think I must have completed the starting plateau in Breath of the Wild about half a dozen times over the years. Sometimes actually when I go back to my game save and I've not played for a while, I'll start a new game save just to go run through the plateau and get myself back up to speed. Being able to repeat things time and time again, it gives me that opportunity to learn and build the skills I need so I can continue into the game. When I'm unable and need to learn, I can also look outside of the game itself. In the last year or so, I have got into City Skylines big time, and I mean big time, like autistic big time. I was at an event not so long ago, and I was chatting to someone about the concepts of roadway hierarchy, and I felt a tad nerdy, but it got worse when the chap asked if I worked for the Highways Agency. I had to kind of shrug and say, no, I'm just a nerd, I play a game. Sorry. However, other people do work for highways agencies. So this is how I got into City Skylines. This is the gateway drug, a chap called Real Civil Engineer. He's an actual civil engineer, and his slightly crazy videos abusing the City Skylines engine to simulate tsunamis is what hooked me into the game. I owned the game for 5 years, but it was RCE who got me to give it a second go. He was very much a gateway drug, though, and after that I discovered Biffa. Biffa is very British, and his series building the city of New Zealand is how I learnt to play the game properly. I love his style. He explains things in really accessible, really straightforward ways. So much so that I ended up watching literally 100 hours of his content before I actually started playing the game. When new DLC comes out, I look forward to Biffa's video about as much as I look forward to the DLC itself. He's essentially the tutorial the game kind of needed, but you know, in his own very British way. It works very well for me. I know it wouldn't work for everyone, which is why streamers are great, because there's so much variety. So that's how learning outside the game can help me to get into things. But there's more than the cognitive side. There's more than learning about the games and its concept. There's also just the physical side for me. So the third area where great games help me learn is by giving me space. One of the games I've played the most in the last few years is SnowRunner. Essentially, I get to run around being Muddy Postman Pat. I think 5-year-old Jamie would absolutely love it. Oh, who the hell am I kidding? I am basically 5-year-old Jamie, and I do love it. It's brilliant. The game opens to a really simple start. There's no complex tutorial, and I can use this space to work out how I want to control the game. I can't always use the same controller, as my pain levels get pretty high and I stop being able to feel my hands and feet as much. So I make use of a Switch, a ZAC, an Xbox Adaptive Controller. Lion's using one here, and he's using it with his tail, which I think is just showing off, really. The beanbag isn't brilliant, so while I might start on the beanbag or game for short periods on the beanbag, I can't hold myself up for long. So I'll move to my blue chair. It's pretty bloody magic, this thing. It took us years to find it, and it's just the right seat for me. It's one of the few places I can sit without getting into heaps of pain. Part of why it took us so long to find is because it's the right combination of the harness and the angles and the foot position and the height. It took a lot of work to get this right, but it has enabled so much of my life. Don't tell my boss, but when we first worked all of this out, I wasn't doing it to do Excel spreadsheets. I had other things I wanted to use this for. So there's 3 areas where a game can help me to learn. It can give me a repeatable tutorial area, it can help me learn outside the game by supporting creators, and finally within the game it can give me a space to dial things in that isn't necessarily in a tutorial, but it's a space where I can try things and mess around with controllers and stuff like that, where I'm not going to get shot or have a tutorial try and chase me through some processes. So that's the ability side. That's how games can help me to learn to do new things. But the next area to think about is my capability, when it's not that I don't know how to do it, it's just that I'm not capable of doing it now, today, but I still want to play. When I become unable, my capability is defined by the barriers that I encounter. More often than not, that's the thing that's stopping me from going forward. Now, the thing with barriers is that games are barriers. The goal isn't to remove all the barriers from a game. Where's the fun in that? Instead, my goal is to play in that gap between the barriers and the impossible. And that's really what great game design is. It's the careful creation of barriers. It's knowing the assumptions you're making so you can work out what barriers your game contains, and then making sure that you empower users and you empower gamers with the options and alternatives they need. Great games empower me with these options. The barriers remain fun rather than becoming impossible. So to make that happen, great game needs to do many things, but one of the first ones is to be deliberate about barriers and where barriers can be found. It might be easy to think of accessibility and difficulty as different things, but really they are both different ways of talking about the intentional barriers within a game. I think the LEGO Star Wars games are absolute masters of this. They are incredibly deliberate with their barriers. Something like falling down a shaft will kill me, but then return me somewhere sensible with little to no penalty for the mistake. The barrier is deliberate. The giant hole in the floor is not an accident, but is also carefully considered in how it impacts my progression through the game. This careful tuning of barriers is brilliant. It's such a great default. I love it. Well done, Star Wars LEGO folks. You're brilliant. I think you're called TF. I can't remember. I should look that up. But not right now because I'm in the middle of doing a talk. So the second area where games can help is by making barriers tunable. So not everybody gets them correct for me on the first go, like LEGO Star Wars does. So being able to tune the barriers as I go is really important. And yeah, as I mentioned before, difficulty is just a fancy way of saying tune the barriers so everyone can find their fun. Some games really work well for me. Jedi Fallen Order is one of the few games I've completed end to end. I was able to tune the gameplay to meet my needs and balance all the barriers out. I did need a bit of help from a friend with some stuff, like working out where to go, but for the most part I found the combat pretty sustainable. I'm really excited for Jedi Survivor, so if anyone can hook me up, let me know. Lion says he can sort you out some antelope, but keep it quiet. Oh, yes please. Anyway, moving on. Another area where games can help me when I'm unable is providing alternatives, but doing it in a way that doesn't isolate me. So, for example, in Gears of War, I can go and play with my friends. We play a lot of Horde together, and I can play with them. I've been playing this game since I was a kid. It's something that I really enjoy. It works for me because it has options like aim assist. That helps me to play right there with my friends without weighing them down. But it also it supports more creativity than most games. So, for example, we've got pretty creative in Horde because I can't really run around that much, right? So we create what my friends like to call the playpen of death. I can maybe snipe or I can use an assault gun, but I stay within the little playpen that keeps me safe, and when my friends die, because they can run out and get shot, I might go out and grab their cog tags. I can play alongside my friends, I'm right involved, and having me in the team, it doesn't change their achievements. It's a social thing. It's giving me the alternative, but it's not isolating me with the alternative. So that's another area where games can help me when I'm incapable, when my capability starts to run out. Ways of things like being really deliberate with barriers, making sure that all the barriers are tunable, and giving me alternatives that don't isolate me into some special game area that I can't do with other people are great ways for games to help me when I'm running out of capability. But as I've said before, capability is only part of the story. It's the stuff I can do today, but there's more to it than that. We need to chat about capacity, how to make the most of the energy I've got. When I start to run out of capacity, the main challenge is being able to stop things smoothly. Talking about this was quite tricky because it's quite hard to give examples. So I've got a few and I hope they make some sense. So this is Lion, and he sat in my chair. When I start to get tired and sore, I'll move to my desk because I can't hold up a controller or anything like that anymore. Please ignore the Mac. I just use that for software development. I do actually own a PC now, which I'll talk about in a bit. When I'm at my desk, because I don't need to hold the controller up, I can use it for things like mapping the throttle. So in SnowRunner, Muddy Postman Pat, I can hold the controller on top of the XAC's button and use that as the throttle. That way I'm only lifting the controller when I need to stop rather than when I need to move. I don't have to hold in a trigger, I don't have to lift anything. Something simple like that can extend my ability to play for hours. However, it's not all perfect. Lion's not as tall as me, so I can't sit as close as he does. One of the barriers I get with gaming at my desk is I find it really hard to read things. When I'm all harnessed into my chair and leaning back, I might be 3 or 4 feet away from the display. This is something I'm working on because equally I'm very wobbly and a giant screen in my bedroom is probably not a good idea, so it's one of the areas that we're looking at. Eventually the energy comes to an end, and at that point I generally am in a lot of pain, things are starting to go numb and I need to stop. And generally speaking, I end up lying down for like 12 to 15 hours a day. And I tell you what, that sounds fun at first, and it was. Like, it wasn't too bad, oh no, I'm just gonna have to lie down and watch YouTube for 12 hours. How terrible. But it really started to eat away at my mental health. It's one of the major kind of challenges with my impairment, with my disability at the moment, with my movement. That my movement is slowly improving, but I still have to lie down these really long times. It's taken a long time to kind of work out how to make this work. So one of the projects that I've been playing with is to go beyond my normal gaming setups and have something I can do when I'm in bed. I've explored things like gaming on a Switch, but the lack of syncing up of game saves kind of ruined that. I've got 600 odd hours into my Xbox game save for SnowRunner. Playing it on the Switch was not a lot of fun compared to what I'd done before. I've also done things like Xbox game streaming using my phone in a Razer like hand tablet thing. And it sort of worked, but it wasn't great because everything is so tiny because it thinks it's playing on a desktop. However, my most recent project is looking at ways I can bring my games into VR. And I don't mean VR as in-person VR, I mean VR as in desktop theatre. So that when I lie down in bed and I lie flat, inside the headset I'm playing my desktop games but on a screen the size of a cinema. I'm still working this bit out. It's surprisingly hard to make VR headsets work when you're lying completely flat, but we're getting there. And I've done things like build a custom open test bench PC for this. I'm making little 3D printed parts, and I don't know where this project's going to end, but I'm going to keep fiddling with it. It's something that I'm quite excited about because I'm hoping that this both will work for gaming, but it might also give me more opportunity to use my computer or use my Mac when I'm only able to lie flat. So that distraction aside, as I run out of capacity, really great games are flexible. They're mindful of my energy and they try and find ways to help me. 3 of the ways that a game can help are to do things like protect my progress. As I mentioned before, I'm swapping between platforms a lot. I play an Xbox, I play a Switch, I play a little bit on the PC now. One of the things that kept me off the PC was being unable to transfer my game saves. So that's kind of one thing, I swap platforms a lot. And then the second thing is I tend to really like long games. This is a really bad combination because it means that I tend to get locked onto platforms that I can't necessarily play because I can't be in the positions that need them. I can't really play the Xbox when I'm lying flat in bed. We've looked at things like, screwing a TV to the ceiling or a projector, and they just don't really work. Hence, I'm looking at the VR headset. However, there are solutions out there. I'm a huge fan of things like Xbox Play Anywhere. My Forza game save, which also at this point has a couple hundred hours in it, moves gracefully between my PC and Xbox pretty often and without any hassle. Half the time I don't even notice it's done it. To me, that's magic. I'm absolutely in love with it. More of this sort of thing, please. More syncing, thinking about how people can move from platform to platform. We're not at the point where every platform is accessible as each other, so as people's needs change, they might need to change platform, and it'd be great if we can take our content and our progress with it. As developers, I'm trusting you to protect my progress. That's part of the trust I place in you when I choose your game and choose to invest my time into it. A second area where great games are really good with my capacity and energy is being mindful with demands. This is about saving the spoons. It's about being mindful of how my spoons and energy are being used so that I can get more done. If a game wastes my spoons badly enough, I may never come back to it because I can't trust it. There are lots of ways that a game can help me manage my energy. For example, skipping options. So sometimes if I'm in a lot of pain, I can't tolerate the pain levels, and if I need to sit there and sit through a long cinematic before I know that my progress is saved, that can be a complete mood killer. I don't feel great that I've won the battle. I am just eagerly, anxiously awaiting it to stop so I know it's saved so I can turn it off. Another example is if you can't let me skip things, let me rest. If I can't skip, let me know how long the cutscene's going to be somehow. An indication of how long the cutscene is really useful. It means that I can maybe close my eyes and let the soreness drop. Letting me do things like skip QuickTime events is also really handy. Something like letting me skip QuickTime events is also really useful because it means that I can rest. I don't have to have a snap quick response, which I'm going to really struggle with. Doing things like this can extend a play session from a couple of hours to multiple hours. It's really productive. Finally, another area that's super useful is bimodal audio production. It's where the audio conveys enough information that the visuals aren't needed. So for example, you can play the cricket commentary over the TV feed, or you can just listen to it on the radio. It works both ways. It's a really useful concept, and if I'm playing a game and I want to close my eyes and rest for a bit, knowing that the audio will tell me when I'm next needed is really useful. It won't just drop me back into the game without me knowing. So that's ways that games can help me respect my energy. They can protect my progress because it's so difficult to achieve, and they can be mindful of the demands it places on me. Now finally, games can help me to stop. When a great game allows me to stop as needed, I can actually go further into the game because I know that I can stop as I get closer and closer to the end of my energy. There's various different ways of doing this. One of the main ones is letting me save whenever I need to. If I can save as needed, I can get right to the end of my energy before I have to stop. If I can only save ever so often, then I can get stuck. Another way that this can help is a really good pause menu. So if I take the Switch for example, when I press the power button and turn it off, it goes to sleep. That's basically just really fancy pausing. Even if a game can't be saved, being able to pause it is really useful. So for example, the SnowRunner game has an option in the menu so that when I pause it, it decreases the GPU load. That's just enough that I can leave the machine on for a couple of hours. So I might be able to have some rest and come back to it at a point where maybe I couldn't otherwise save elegantly. Another thing is tell me whether your game supports sleep mode or not. If I've got a Windows machine, as I do now, I am kind of shocked at how badly sleep works. So many games just won't sleep and wake properly. I'm used to consoles. Like that sleep-wake support is really useful. If it's not supported, please tell me somewhere so that I can make an informed decision on things. So, in a nutshell, well, not much of a nutshell, I think I've been talking for about 10 minutes. Ability, capability, and capacity. They're all about answering that question, what can I do? And in a way that helps me choose what to do and work out how to make my future better, work out how to improve things. So, just to end, gaming has saved me in more ways than I could ever explain. It gives me the opportunity to visit amazing sites and create new things and enjoy a world of joyful moments, regardless of what's happening with my body and situation. I wouldn't be who I am today without games, without you, without the experiences you create. Thank you. I'm excited for the future to come, and I hope that sharing this lens of ability, capability, and capacity is useful for you in the future. Thank you very much. If you like this lot, then you can find me on the internet. I host a podcast called 1800 Seconds on Autism, which is made by BBC Sounds. You can find out more about Lion and me at jamieandlion.com, and you can find me on Twitter as @SpacedOutSmiles or @JamieKnight. Cheers.